this week on Modular Modcast?
For me, it was, Steve Reich's Come Out record was like one of my songs that I played a lot for myself and friends. That was always the song I played for people when they were coming down from whatever drugs. You got to check this out.
Right. Yeah.
Probably was very annoying. I probably sent people on bad trips on several occasions.
That's not nearly as annoying as me making an album called Music to Come Down To for that purpose. Hello and welcome to another episode of Modular Modcast. My name is Tim Held, and this week we have Daedelus back on the show. They have a new album coming out this Friday. If you're listening to this on the day of the release, we talk a little bit about the album, but we mostly just kind of talk about the state of modular, our woes, our loves, and all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, that's coming up in a moment. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about the Intro to Eurorack workshop that I am going to be running at Patchworks August 18th at 3 p.m. Link in the show description to tickets and all the information as to how you can get on board and be a part of that. But if you're not in the Pacific Northwest, I'm hoping that sometime in the near future, after I've run the workshop a couple times, I will be able to offer it remotely. So we'll see what happens with that. Also, I'm going to be playing at Tacoma Porch Fest this coming weekend, in 2 days from when this is being released. Or is it tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know when this is going to be released. I'm currently in a camp trailer at my parents' house because I'm helping out with my mom again. So, yeah, it's hard to keep track of, what day is it? Anyways, yeah, I'll be playing Saturday, I believe at 1 p.m. Link in the show description. I'm really looking forward to this. I haven't played in a long time. And I don't think I've played in Washington State since before the pandemic. I also want to say thank you to all of the sponsors: 4MS, After Later Audio, Patchworks Seattle, Novation, and I want to give a shout out to AI Synthesis. I just recently built a bunch of kits from AI Synthesis, and I have a video in the works about that, but I have yet to get to it. But I built the OTA filter. This is the second time I've built this kit, and I let somebody borrow my original one like years ago, and just it's been like perpetually on loan, so it's nice to have it back because it's a really, really cool filter. And AI's build guides, like if you want to get into some DIY, that is a great place to start. Also, the 4MS kits for the new looping delay and the sampler. I just recently built those as well. And in this episode, actually, I'm talking with Alfred about thinking that I screwed up on the sampler kit, which I did, but I did fix it and it works. And I'll show you some pictures and some video about what I did to mess it up. That was completely my fault, and how I fixed it. It doesn't look good, I'll tell you that, but great modules. It's nice to have these two of my favorite modules, but like a pared down version of each one, having them a little smaller so I can fit them in my tiny little setup so I can go play on people's porches and stuff, There's not going to be a demo this week, and I know I've been kind of slacking on the demos lately. I just haven't had time to do that. Boo-hoo, woe is me. But one of the reasons that I haven't had time to do that is because I've actually been working with Madrona Labs, creating tutorial videos on Kyvo, their granular physical modeling soft synth that is, if you've been listening to the show long enough, you know that I'm not much of a soft synth person. I'm Mr. Hardware, and not for any reason other than I need the tactile stuff, or I thought I did. But now I think I just needed the right user interface and just a cool enough soft synth to play with, and Kyvo and all the other Madrona stuff is exactly that. So if you want to check out those videos, I'll put a link in the show description to the YouTube page. But yeah, definitely going to be creating a lot of samples to put on the 4MS sampler with Kyvo. Modular Modcast, as always, is brought to you by the lovely folks over at Patchworks. Patchworks is more than just a synthesizer, music gear shop. They're building a community by connecting you to the joy of music with workshops, classes, live music events, and friendly, knowledgeable staff. They are there to help you with wherever it is you are at in your music making journey. Located in the Wallingford neighborhood in Seattle, stop by Patchwork showroom to play with your favorite music gear and join their community. And if you don't live in the Pacific Northwest region of the world, then head over to patchworks.com, patchwerks.com, where they have not just the latest and greatest in modular, but all sorts of synthesizer gear, as well as home studio equipment. Once again, that is patchworks.com, patchwerks.com.
Anyways, let's jump in. Let's jump in though. Yeah.
It's so nice to see and hear you. We chat somewhat regularly via text and everything, but we don't get a lot of face-to-face time because we're on separate sides of the country and all that. But I am so excited to dive into this new record with you. Because
cool.
The press release, like the way just the explanation of it all and stuff.
Sure, we can talk about it a little bit. Of course, it's a great excuse to be able to chat with you about it, but I want to talk to you about the state of modular.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything on your mind, like specifically?
I just got that Qt Labs messed up and it's messing me up.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh gosh, it's rad. It's super weird. Yeah. It's called messed up.
What is it?
It's a clock. It's a clock.
Okay.
But it not only distributes just normal clock and click, but also you can run modulating frequency through it so that you can get off clock and you can get still a line still constrained, but then also free from. So I'm just having the most fun taking, one subdivision, taking it up to 15 subdivisions of the clock. So it's sending the weird shaky shakers. And, especially from a place of, modular either is full wiggles or very, very on the grid. And liking this kind of half-steppy place that to me is more evocative of a Jay Dilla than it is a Susan Ciani or something.
Actually, this makes, I hadn't even really thought of this going into our chat today, but I think one of our last longer text threads was just talking about clocks and, I was just trying to, find, you'd kind of give me some okay, I want this, but now that you're mentioning that this, the messed up, it's this sounds like exactly what this sounds like it was made for you, kind of.
And the funny thing is, as much as yes, I agree. I feel like it was brought forth, but I literally heard about it because Perfect Circuit, in their never-ending desire to sell me things, it walked up on my shore. Right? It was just they announced it, and it was okay, I can use my whatever 10% off coupon that they also come sloshing around with every season, and I was just okay. And it was impulse purchase, but it was made for me, literally. The engineer probably sat up at night being what does Daedalus need? And it spit it out. The computer spit it out.
Who's the developer again?
Qt Labs out of New York, I believe.
Okay, cool. Have you talked to the developer since, or?
No, not as such. I feel a little spoiled, and this is maybe no surprise. I know you have quite a history of this as well. Modular is such a hobbyist community writ large, and I know it sells lots of units and stuff, but just the fact you can reach out to people and just be hey, I like what you did, you person who made the thing that I am actually purchasing.
Yeah.
It's such a trip. You don't have many other industries that close to the source.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trip.
It's really cool. I think I hear from a lot of developers that they don't get reached out to enough. So I always like to try to find an opportunity to say not enough, but as much as you'd think. Sorry, enough is not the word. They don't get reached out to as often as one would think. And I've heard people who aren't developers, I wouldn't want to bother them, but I always like to take the opportunity to, if you're enjoying somebody's designs, let them know. They love to hear that, and you're not bothering them, So
it's the same thing does show up in kind of music where sometimes people are I'm not going to comment to this. I don't want to wade in. I'm not official enough. I don't know X, Y, or Z, but I think everybody who has the aptitude or even the onus to like buy something, I mean, gosh, like what a cool gift you're giving someone who their song, quote unquote, is this $250 piece of metal that they scrap together. And if you're interacting with that song or sound source, that's I imagine that people do appreciate that. And I certainly do as a person who makes songs. When people leave a review or decide to
Of
message in one of the
course.
social, that makes all the difference in the world. So
Yeah,
that's cool
definitely.
too,
Yeah.
though.
So what else? What else as far as the state of modular goes? I've had some changes as well that I'm excited to share with you. But I mean, it
Oof.
sounds like you had some locked and loaded. So let's keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just know that it's the flavor of the moment to have everything granular. So
Mm-hmm.
many different new units on the market, and I've been doing my simplified granular system where I got those new 4MS samplers,
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
stereo triggered sampler, not some acronym. It's just sampler now, which is
Mm-hmm.
confusing to me. I'm used to 4MS that is much more acronym based.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Yeah. Swan and Peg and yeah.
everything. So yeah, so when they're coming out with something straightforward like that, I have to be like, is this the same company that I know? And of course, it's that and more. It's even more useful in some ways than the STS because it's stereo and it plays into all my stereo obsessions that labels like and companies like Warong and others have been feeding
Mm-hmm.
me so nicely. And so now that I can run samplers in stereo and I can kind of do some grain processes in the most simplified form, it's like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's not true graining, but
Like bringing
it's still
the
something.
the start and end time, like inverting those, and you can get some cool like yeah.
You can get them
uh,
way down, way down. So
yeah.
I've really been enjoying that fidget's happening in the wider modular space.
Mm-hmm.
Although, and yeah, is it
Yeah, I
Aerosmith, not
just
Air,
saw.
yeah,
I think it's just Error Instruments. Yeah.
Air Instruments. Thank you. Yeah, they just announced theirs, and it the price for granular is so cheap now on the modular side. I just know that eventually, like, there will be every style of new and novel, everything from vector synthesis and now grain and like whatever else. It's like it's all going to come into fashion. We're all going to have modules, and I just hope that people's appetites for all these different voices stays viable enough that makers still feel challenged to go to something new, and it isn't just the flavor of the moment. Like I'm just not
Yeah.
used to a modular space that is so much based on a like these are the colors for fall 2023.
Right,
It's like
right. And I think that's a really unfortunate side, just the fact that we all do everybody who I talk to in our whole community, and our friends that our common friends and everything, we all do what we do because, we're artists and we love creating, right? But in order to keep that going, you have to make some money off of it. So that's something that I've often asked makers, like how much does the market affect what you decide to put into production? Because so every maker has a list of designs they want to do, and unfortunately it does play a role. Um, yeah.
one thing that seems like it's fallen out of favor, but I think it does speak to this, is that it used to be that a lot of makers, I don't know if it was because of a lack of some modules on the market, or maybe just it wasn't as popularized, but every maker kind of ended up having a full system. And what
Yeah.
constituted a
Yep.
full system was slightly remixed per maker, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh famously had their, kind of skiff that you could buy in total, and it would be these individual units. IntelliGel certainly seems to be in the same kind of
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things, but some of the up and comers don't seem to be quite like they're lacking some of these basic utility things, or they're lacking some like straightforward voices and all this kind of other stuff. And I love the approach, though. I like the kind of dispersed approach where people are kind of coming at it sidelong, or maybe it's even signaling some of the changing of the guard where we need differently enabled systems. Like I don't know, it's like I love what I've been building with 4MS in terms of my like metaphor of DJ modular kind
Mm-hmm.
of style things. And I see other people similarly like now playing in that space, or they have been for a while, and I'm just catching wind of it more likely. And I feel like in some ways that's like a self-contained system waiting to happen from a
Yeah.
4MS or from, you know, gosh, there's a few other people who are making mixers. I mean, certainly IntelliGel now has like a mixer, straight up like crossfading mixer
Right.
that they have
Yeah.
in the market. So things like that are going to feed into this possibility. But the idea that it's distributed amongst a bunch of different makers other than the kind of mind of one engineering type or a conglomerate of one of these companies is a little different. And I'm like missing it slightly. When I first peeked in the kind of modular space, it was way more about like you kind of got somebody's point of view and you ran with
Yeah.
it. Now it's a little different.
Yeah, I wonder, like, just the chip shortage, and then like going through COVID with the stimulus and everything, like that was probably the best time for modular synthesis sales. And then with the economy and everything, I think it's kind of dipped again. And how many of these smaller companies just like had to go on pause, or maybe just had to stop doing what they're doing because of this. So yeah, I hope to see. I think honestly, like I think like anything you can do in modular, obviously you can do in soft synths, or you can get a much more affordable and maybe a less time consuming method of creating a piece of music, just because the nature of plugging in the patch cables and doing all the deciding, like it's not the most efficient way, but I think people really love the format. And I still think that the semi modular is going to be, mean, it's obviously already like very popular with the make noise stuff, and then IntelliGel's new thing. And I just hope that actual modular stays in, like it stays a thing, because I can see it kind of going the way of the buffalo, as so to speak, because of just like, okay, well, now they're all digital, they're all doing multifunction, so what is the real point of having the modular patch bay and everything, other than just liking that process? Or
Well, I will offer that, thank goodness for Modular on the Spot and some of these situations
definitely.
that bring us together and bring us out loud and lively, both because it's obvious, it's a huge place where people can get the bug, they can kind of understand what's going on, they can see the work being done, but also any amount of the VCV rack or the digital side of things that does live in the computer but emulates or kind of works like modular, just is not the same form factor, not the same feeling, not the same play
Exactly.
space. And
Hmm.
I don't mean to evangelize, but to witness it is to understand it, is to want to do it. And I don't think that happens with a DAW. Like, it's a very different thing when you see somebody mousing around on a DAW and they're getting cool output, but it just yeah, I don't know if it transmits in the same fidelity, let's say,
Right.
as the
Yeah.
live show.
Yeah, and I think it's just inherently interesting to look at, especially to people who maybe don't know much about it or about it at all. How many modular on the spots? I would be surprised if there was ever a modular on the spot where somebody wandering by didn't stop and then start asking some questions. Like, and I think, yeah, the form factor, the physicality of it, I think that's the attractive part. Almost like even more so than the fact that like it is modular, it exists to have this ultimate control over signal flow. I almost feel like, just from what I've gathered talking to people and everything, that's almost like third on the list of importance. Of course, like the control and everything, but like people don't want to mess with screens, and um, it is inherent, like it invites you to play it. You see it over there in the corner, and you see all the blinky lights and stuff. You're like, I need to interact with this thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
played a modular on the spot in Boston with Boston Modular
Oh,
on the
cool.
Spot as a collective. It was so rad. I wish I could give you all the esoteric names of like semi mystical
Right.
acts and their
Uh-huh.
aliases slash just like, the whole thing. Like, either you're going to be called like snowbirds of paradise, or you're going to be. And I think one of the groups was snow beasts. I want to say. Oh gosh,
Uh-huh.
I don't get it wrong. But then on the other side, you have someone like Matthew Cha, who just it killed it, did such a good set, but equally just goes by Matthew Cha. It doesn't necessarily like
Mm-hmm.
invite the entire world, but at the same time, it's like was super rad. So we played, and it was situated right during this like kind of outdoor festival where people were hawking their like weird laser cut, like incense holders and whatnot. And then on the side was on a basketball court right next to like a kids water park was this modular on the spot, and we just had so many people wandering up and being like, I I don't know what this is. A, B, are you all DJs? C,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
are you noise acts? Because of course we're in New England, so there is a tradition of noise and stuff. So
Yeah, right,
I don't
right.
think anybody thought we were a lightning bolt or nothing like that, but there was some such. And
Uh-huh.
but yeah, the passerbys, it was so cool to see them just light up because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't immediately understand, but there was something in the sound.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great, as it should
I'm
be.
I'm trying to, I need to actually reach out to Max from Portland Modular on the Spot, because they invited me to do one, and I really would like
Hey,
to. I haven't performed in so long, and I feel like I have yet to do a good live modular performance, and I feel like I feel like I can now. like,
Good, but also
yeah.
why haven't you done a good modular performance? Are you just too used to having the computer to fall back on, the recording device?
No, I don't really. So I think, and for no puritanical reasons, but I've always been really intent, like it's been my intent to play a whole set with just a 7U 104
Yeah.
case, right? Um, and so like I feel like in order to do that, you have to have a whole lot of skill, but you also have to have the right setup. Like, people, that if you have like just a basic voice that's, all huge modules and stuff, like you could do something long and slow that doesn't have a lot of, you know, change and dynamics to it. But, you know, I want with modular performance, I just want to make sure that I'm doing something that I'm where I don't feel like I'm taking somebody like an audience hostage. Like, listen to me squiggle for a while. And I think I've done a few, and that's all on me. That's just
Yeah,
that's me in my own head, of course.
100%.
Um, I feel like I've made some really good patches for live sets, but after about 7 minutes, I'm kind of like, usually what I do is like, all right, I'm just gonna fuck this up and see if I can kind of bring it back together, And I
Sure.
don't do that in my rehearsal because I like, all right, this is solid for 7 minutes. The last live show I played was in Portland, and I think the actual patch I had set up was really, really great. In moving, because we had backlined, and moving, a tiny cable had come out in a sea
Yeah.
of cables, and it was messing up my clock. So everything was like super jittery and not in a fun way. So I was spent a lot of time figuring that out, and it was like this repetitive thing that built to get to this big drop, but it went on too long and was all fucked up. So like I made the most of it and like made jokes and but I built that set with the intent of being like, I'm gonna go and show Portland I'm not just the podcast guy, and I don't think I did that.
And I appreciate where you're coming from, and obviously you can have esteem or kind of have your own set of critical self-critical values that you hold towards your performance, and that's not invalid. I would imagine that just the going through the thing and kind of problem solving is itself its own show, and people probably in the audience had a lot of heart towards that. But in addition to that, I would recommend, and maybe this isn't part of your interest, but should live patch something, should get the interesting things in front of you, should try to live patch in front of the audience, and then the natural flow of your discovery will be the show.
I
I think that might be a
I think
challenge for you.
yeah, and I think I honestly feel like I could probably pull that off and make it like pretty interesting, because I would have the safety net of being like, well, who knows what's going to happen. But I think we've talked about this quite a bit, but I've never been big on samplers because I don't like writing samples and stuff. And that, I did my thing for a while, but that was just so not right, So I hadn't found the sampler that fit, but I don't think you can see it back here. But I got the Busy Circuits ASQ1. It's got like the big like 909 old school. It's based. I think it's based off of the SH sampler. So I don't remember exactly which one, but you can play it. You can write in you can just. And then I also got the zero control for Make Noise, because I was like, this is going to work perfectly with the Swan because it's got all those 1 volt per octave ins. And it's got this, the note CV out, but there are these other strength and all this. Well, with the Swan, because it's all quantized, those can be used as voltage too. So I can set up these chord sequences.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so like, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, sequencers. I was just leaning on processing like samples or just, really simple drones through granular stuff, and which is all fine, but it is a little bit noise swashy, and I feel like when I play live, I want people to like have something to bob their head to and enjoy themselves. And, so yeah, I'm bringing guitar back in too. So like I'm playing guitar with modular like a lot. So, and I'm super comfortable with that because I've been playing, since I was a kid. So I'm hoping that I can get something together, but also it's trying to find the time. I know this is an annoying thing for people to complain about, but it's like just trying to find the time to try to set up a show or
No, I
something.
mean, but that's part of the reason to set up a show is because it forces you to
Totally.
prioritize some of these things, kind of get
Yeah,
your head working in the right direction. And then if you're going to use guitar, it takes up some of your hands. So you may want to have more autonomous or sequenced things going on in the background anyways. I
exactly.
didn't realize I
Right.
was going to come back and fold so much. So that makes
Yeah.
all the sense. Good
And
on
I
you
think I want
for
to have it like kind of, be one thing, but have like, okay, I'm playing guitar here and maybe just playing guitar through the modular, something slow, and then, build and then maybe just go into a thing where I'm actually playing the keys on the zero control, have it be set up almost like more of like a set of movements than just like, because everything I've ever done live has always just been like, all right, I'm starting here and I'm ending here, but it's never stopping. And
yeah.
um, so yeah, but yeah, that was the
Some more,
thing I was excited to tell you about. What's that?
I said some more scenes within that might do you well.
Exactly. And I got the sampler as well, the stereo sampler. Um, so the 4MS one, actually I got the kit and I built it and I didn't have one of the legs for the buttons all the way through, and I thought I did. And it even tells you to check for that. So I soldered everything and I couldn't get it out because
Yeah.
desoldering things is crazy. And then I actually like got the trace picked up off of the board and it was just hanging by a thread. So I got this little tiny wire and I wrapped it around. And I think, and it, something's, I need to go through it and check, but I might have to. I might have to start over on that one, which I'm really bummed about because they made it so easy for us.
That's rad. I mean, but it's good on you for even doing the thing. And obviously, there's a learning curve to it. So don't beat yourself up too much. But dang, that is a little
Yeah,
tough to have that, especially when you know what it is, rather than it being an unknown thing that's just kind of warbly.
totally. Yeah, if it wasn't,
Yeah.
if it was like an unknown, then it's like I don't even know how I'd begin to find this. But like I know exactly what it is, and I think the trace just got lifted too much, and I think is maybe a little too weak to make the signal because I actually got it to play for a second, but it's one of those moving
Yeah.
things around and shit. So I'm gonna try again, but yeah. But yeah, the reason I bring that up is get some nice background kind of things to play over field recordings or whatever, or even beats with a bass line that I can rock to with a guitar or whatever. So that's kind of the hope right now. But yeah, I really wanted to tell you I finally like got
You made the
couple
plunge. Yeah.
sequencers.
Awesome. And wait, do you have any quantizers right now? Any official quantizers? The
um
IntelliGel?
no, the ASQ, both of the CV outs are quantized, and you actually just write it to whatever scale you want, right?
Well, but I'm saying, do you have any specific quantizers? Any of those things that have like the buttoniness on the bottom usually or in the middle of the instrument? There's a handful of these different companies that make them now. So
No, but I know that the SQ one does have like just a quantizer section, and then I think you
okay.
use the keys to write in the scale that you want, and then as you know, like the Swan has a couple different like modes or whatever. So yeah, no, I'm just kind of mostly going to use the ASQ for. I mean, it'll all be like Western scale stuff for now, but I kind of want to like. I want to just get some basics under my belt before I start going for some like more
Don't
odd.
forget, you can always add a little slewiness or some utility after the
Right.
quantizer to get things out of that Westernness pretty
Right.
fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
Um, it's harder to get to something specific EDO, some specific micro tuning or whatever, but it's not impossible by any means. It's nice that this
Yeah.
stuff is out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm actually trying to write this like I've tracked some stuff. I want to make like a thrashy electro punk like heavy rock kind of thing.
Sure.
I've been listening to a lot of Deerhoof and a lot of Lightning Bolt, so I just want to rock lately. So I'm like doing the whole tune down to C, but have it like still standard tuning so you can just get a little chunkier. So I'm kind of sticking with some pretty basic, a harmonic minor, just like stuff that sounds cool, but it's not super deep as far as like getting in like weird music theory kind of stuff. But
I mean, it's this, hey, if you don't know any better, you can be as deep and offshore as you can. Doesn't matter. Nobody will bat a laugh as long as it sounds, as long as you're holding the spirit of it. So that's great. Well,
uh-huh.
congratulations. It sounds like an exciting direction.
Yeah, I'm having it's you know it's just given me a lot more confidence and just that creative boost. Like sometimes you go through the lulls and then sometimes you feel like you are ready to just express, and I think the confidence comes from bringing in the guitar because like
Mhm.
if something goes horribly wrong, I could if I have some cool effects, I could play a set with just a guitar. It might be a little slow and whatever, but I could do that if I had to. So it's like a safety net that I probably don't need, but mentally having it is.
Are you a fan of Deafheaven? Have we talked about them before?
I feel like we have. I've heard that's one of the bands that people have often
I just think
recommended.
if you're into the heavy, but also utilizing, kind of, it isn't like a modular thing by Deafheaven by any means, but it is like shoegaze meets death metal is kind of like a
Okay,
catchphrase.
yeah,
You may dig it. It is kind of oscillate wildly back and forth sometimes, like straight up like the kind of Cookie Monster vocal thing, and then suddenly you're like in like a shimmery scape of like endless reverbs and heavily compressed guitars, and then it like will swish back to the blast beats. It's great that way though. I think you'll really
okay.
dig.
Is that kind of along the lines of like liturgy or?
I'm not up to speed on so much of that stuff. Like my
Okay,
ears are so electronically enabled. I just happen to have the every once in a while, like I should listen to more math rock, or
right, yeah,
like
yeah.
I like sounds, but like I just check out. Like I went through a recent Midwest emo phase, and
Okay,
by that
yeah.
I wanted to like cry into a pillow a little bit
Uh-huh,
in the kind of good
uh-huh.
way. And it served its purpose, and it certainly got me to some other sounds. But it was just like these worlds are too enormous. Like we're talking
Yeah,
about being hobbyists with a synthesizer, but Lord, if you're not like as serious as all things about whatever kind of micro genre, you're just it's impossible.
totally. Which I think is cool and it's also daunting, because it's like the idea of the one big radio rock band. Like all these superstars are kind of like they're all older now because there aren't so many new ones as much. And I don't know. I think that ultimately will be better for the psyche of everyone
I mean,
involved.
I would argue there was way more new ones. It's just they're not in the genres that we've come to think of as being
I,
monolithic or
right,
iconic. Like,
you
have you
right.
checked out Plug before? Plugg as a
I don't
genre?
think so. No, no, not as a genre. No.
It's an ethereal offshoot of trap music, and
Okay.
it's like like half the artists like I've never heard of, and like you just kind of come across something and you like, check out their Spotify, and there's like 1 million listeners per month. It's like, oh, I'm just not checked into this. Like this
Right.
is happening. It's like a
Right.
full constructed world with like superstars, and I'm just not doing my diligence. One of the beautiful things about teaching, of course, at a school with young people is that they're like got the tattoos, they're like living and breathing,
Right.
this
Right. Yeah.
like they're gonna make it in that world, and you're just like I don't even know the name of the genre, much less the like half the artists, and I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Just going through like, top albums of 2023 on, like cool sites or whatever. I'm like, I have no idea who any of these people are.
Yeah,
And I feel like I've got this habit of getting into a band like 10, 20 years after like they were, like I've only been it's maybe been 3 or 4 years now that I've been like super into Deerhoof, but they've been around forever, like so I tend to find old stuff and then go back in time and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm never going to know what's going on right now. But
it's beautiful. Just to be okay in the disconnect is a hard feeling, but it
mhm.
also means you can connect with what's authentic to you. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
absolutely. And I think I'm also to the age where a lot of the new stuff that comes out, I don't want to say it's like I don't want to be the old guy that's like, "Oh, this is just derivative of this," because most everything that was influential to me as a youngster was super derivative of something else. I mean, I think derivative maybe is not the right word, but taking inspiration from and kind of the combination. But a lot of the stuff I hear, I'm just kind of like, well, this just sounds like this stuff, and I like that more, like, but yeah, I also don't have a lot of time to just try to give because it
Totally.
takes time to you have to dedicate yourself to a new record or a new artist to
That's
to
what
fully find out if you like it.
we can all be more like Pauline Oliveros always. It's the mantra. It's the
Hmm.
saying.
Hmm.
Have that deep listening. I don't do it often enough, but like pick a record never heard, but something that's just whatever reason has crossed the penumbra and like it's in somewhere in the focus, and just give it an actual listen. Try to do it dispassionately. Try not to involve the active mind that brings in all the other stuff that has been or will be. Just listen to it for what it is, and like, geek out on like, how they made the snare sound like whatever, and whatever modules they might have used. Whether or not they even knew that they did, if they're sampling some esoteric electronic music, you're like, wait, I know that thing, but try not to like think about it too much. Yeah, it's a good practice to keep, and I think it will. We would all do better if we could do that, but it's impossible. It's way too much, way too many video games to play, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Totally. And it's like I often feel like I want to make it more than I want to listen to it, and I'm kind of an information not sponge, because I don't retain all of it, but I just like to learn about things, and I get pretty obsessive about particular things. So I often listen to a lot of podcasts, like on drives and stuff, or audiobooks or whatever, master classes on YouTube. But I feel like they're the thing that desire to listen to music. I either want to listen to something that I can sing along to, because I love singing, even though I don't ever do it publicly or anything. And it's not even technically music, but I find myself like when I want to do like the headphone immersive thing, I'd rather just listen to the last field recording I made when I left my field recorder outside somewhere in the woods overnight. And I haven't listened to what maybe happened. I've got like multiple nights, hours that I haven't even checked out. And when you're in the woods, weird shit can happen at nights. Like I left one at my parents' house, and I'd been falling asleep to it because I liked, white noise and stuff like that. It's just birds at night, and an hour and 25 minutes into it, right by the field recorder, 2 raccoons fighting over something. And it woke me up. It scared the shit out of me, because it's like and I'm going to sample that for something, because it's just like this horrendous sound, but it's amazing. Yeah. I got to send that to you.
Right? That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, what of all the things to catch too, right?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. And it's kind of like fishing. It's a numbers game, because, like the sound of coyotes, like a pack of coyotes going off in the distance, like it doesn't sound the way a lot, like if you're not familiar with what they sound like, they don't sound like dogs. It sounds like a bunch of children having a satanic ritual. It's a very creepy sound, because they're not howling. They're like have this yippy thing, and it's very eerie.
They're communicating. Yeah, extremely. Mm-hmm. I can say that one of my teachers in college, and this is ages ago, his claim to fame was he put out a record of Coyote songs that were like electronically pushed around. And like, this is a program that had one synthesizer course and like maybe 2 levels of that course, you know what I mean? Like that kind of vibe. And I took that 7 times.
Oh shit.
So I took it. Yeah. Like I rang that doorbell until they told me I had to stop. But, yeah, he was rad. And that record, it always stuck with me that he got all those yips and like just pushed him around a little bit. It sounds rad.
Okay. What is it called again?
It's on like Nonsuch. It's on like a label.
Okay.
And it's definitely like electroacoustic music, but it has like, it's like wolf songs, but it's like coyote music or whatever the thing is.
Okay. I'm looking this up now because I have to hear this.
Yeah, Robert something. I hate to bring up things and immediately have to bail on any technical information, but that's my brain. You have a media brain. I have the anti-media brain. Wait, this sounds like something I've heard, and then like no information about how or when, which I always feel like is going to like give me some sort of fallback if ever I get grilled on samples. I'll be like, I truly don't remember. I truly don't know. Put the polygraph on.
You've worked with so many too. Like, there's no way you can't keep track of all those. Like, how often are you even? Yeah, I mean, at this point, are you remembering like colors and numbers rather? Because you
the position on the vinyl. Like, I'm actually pretty good at remembering like when if I can get a song that I know I've sampled, like when in the song I sampled. Silly thing.
It's so weird how, I was just thinking the other day about how my brain, there is like some weird little thing where it's like, for some reason I can key in on that, but it's not like real information that I could convey to somebody else. And I can't remember what it was. I hope that comes back. But yeah, what else, like, what else modular wise? Is there anything that you are Sounds like you found the clock thing that you're into, and I know the crossfader thing has been kind of eluding you for a while. Is there have you?
Yeah, I mean, I got the IntelliJ Crossfader. I like it a lot. I did sweat into it briefly
Oh
during this last
no.
show,
Uh huh.
and it did stop crossfading in the way you would expect. And so it suffers from what most crossfaders do, which is it is a physical, impedance or whatever, like, or, like a potentiometer, so to speak. And so it I have to remember that I am, as a human player, making sometimes a mockery of this kind of perfect machines. So that just became part of the show. It's like, okay, well, I'm losing some of my source material, and I have to kind of think about things a little differently. I may start to incorporate more kinds of crossfading. Like I got Subway from WMD, right? Is
Okay.
that WMD?
I'm not sure.
Awesome kind of crossfader thing, but it's only mono source. You can kind of make it stereo. You could fade. Oh no, it's mono all the way through because it has one output, 6 inputs, one output. Rad little like
Mm-hmm.
utility weird thing. I'm gonna have so much fun with that eventually when I get the right combination of things. But I got a 3 body is what I'm building towards. I've been messing around with all these different utilities and all these. I love item. I got that I think with
Mm-hmm.
you when I was last up your direction. I'm
Yeah,
absolutely adoring that still. Finds its way into all of my skiffs.
that thing's
But yeah,
crazy.
the real
Yeah.
thing, it's super crazy. It does so much. I can't wait to really give it a rinse. I really understand it, so to speak, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
always kind of busy trying to make it work rather than just try to get to the depths of it.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, the thing I got and that I haven't utilized at all yet is 3 body, which is, the schlappy,
Mm-hmm.
um, amazing digital oscillator strangeness that, Schlappy is so good at.
It's so great.
Not
Yeah.
I know it's going to be awesome, but like it's proving to be a little elusive. And I know part of it is that I don't have as much imagination towards voices, like towards oscillators.
Mm-hmm.
I like what I was able to do immediately with SWN and some of the things, but like, I feel like I feel like a fake in terms of modular because I love my no voice system and like the kind of the modular DJ thing and all that stuff, but like, and I can perform with it immediately and I know a way around it. But when it comes to a voice, like I just like, what do I do? Just make it play
Mm-hmm.
notes? That
Yeah.
seems so
No, that's
on the
that's where
nose.
I've
Like,
been. Yeah. Yeah, that's where
mm,
I've been too. But I think getting the Swan and then the triphase oscillator from New Systems Instruments, like messing with those two together, has made me really like want to get into doing melodic stuff for the first time in modular. And then yeah, the 3 body is just like, especially because with the digital thing, and if you're using it in the what's it called? I forgot the mode, but it's basically like the second and third oscillator will kind of track, not really track, but you can do some really interesting, almost chordy type stuff. And yeah, but it's
somebody's
deep. I
listening to
mean,
this podcast. Somebody's listening to this podcast right now and yelling at us with the modes. They're like, "How do you not know this? You both have this. How do you not know this? This is the thing that makes it so cool." Sorry,
yeah,
everyone out there listening. Yeah,
right.
we're
Yeah. Well, it's right
way through
there.
all this.
Okay. Well, now I
Yeah.
gotta look since it's
Well,
right
so I
here.
will say, while you're off mic briefly, I will say that I'm very excited about the state of modular. I think, I think I've said this to you every single time we've talked, but the fact that it is still a passioned hobbyist community rather than these kind of needful professionals means that we still get clever things like clockwork. You just wait another couple months and there will be a new wave of something really a different take on
Mm-hmm.
either trad things or like something brand new that like sets the world on fire. And I don't mean to be so restive towards that, but like and so many other avenues of the music tech industry, it's like people kind of just rehash. There's very little new that really comes along.
Yeah.
Thankfully, and if you're kind of get geeky in the kind of live coding or the Max for Live space, there's some interesting things going on there too. Some great makers and stuff. But like, dang, if you just can just like wait till something really cool happens, and it will inspire a song, a record, and a something. And I
Totally.
feel such a beneficiary of that. Yeah.
I like this is something that is really uh you've helped me like make peace with something that when I first started like getting into modular, it was younger, not as many makers, and a lot of it was like um it's not the gear, it's the artist, and the gear is just our tool. And I'm like, yes, that's true, but I've also had pieces of gear literally inspire like the idea that became a whole album and a process. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like looking to gear for inspiration. And I feel like that's been poo-pooed a lot.
Well, I mean, I think we have this idea that the musician is this genius maker who sits on a pedestal and throws lightning bolts from a mountaintop, and that's fine. People who do that, but if you really look at like things, something like the Belleville Three out of Detroit, or that area that invented techno, it's like sure they had a vision and they had a scheme that they were going to put things in, but the 808 was a muse, and it wasn't just
Right.
muse; it was their format for at least a time. And same thing with like I'm a kind of student of this stuff, and I teach this stuff, and like or juke music with people like Dion, who sadly passed just very recently, but RP Boo and others who kind of were pivoting the kind of very very fast house sound to something more triplety slash hellacious that juke became footwork is. They were using the R50 because they wanted those 808 sounds, but the R50 happened to be this kind of place where they could get a whole bunch of different Roland drum machines, and that just happened to have all the rock toms also in there. So as they're like scrolling around to find the next sound, it's like, oh wait, what are those? Like I've never heard those before. Total like transmission immediately from the equipment to the utterly changed even just the way that the rhythm would play, or the central intent of the music itself. Suddenly, like, oh wait, we can do this, and we don't have to be beholden to whatever crass and immediate and wonderful samples that was previously. And it just goes on and on and on like that. Like the equipment is important. The equipment has a voice, and it is not just your sidekick, but it is like you're the person in the band with you. They're the slightly mouthy or slightly loud people in the band.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's why I think, I don't think it's about having a lot of modules. I think, but making the size case that I want to work live. I don't know if it's a challenge. It's probably laziness because I don't want to have to pack a bunch of stuff. Because I've been in bands, I've schlepped gear, like I'm over it. But having the right pieces in the kit for you, it's not going to make you a great artist. You have to figure out how to use it all and get your vision to come out through it. But you also have to do some time figuring out what are these little conduits that you're going to squeeze through, or whatever.
And sometimes it's worthwhile quieting the mind because you have a lot of possibility. I know you have a lot of modules and you're in communication with a lot of makers. You have a lot of sense of what's coming and what's been. You might have to quiet some of those curiosities and just settle on something that is that 7U in front of you. And just make that thing work. But also I feel you. It's like, I know you've done enough of these recordings, both through the podcast and then also out in the world where, maybe you're not meant to be satisfied with this. Maybe you're in a questing place.
It's funny. I was when I'd first gotten super into guitar pedals. So this was like the seed that was planted that became this garden in the studio now. But I was constantly switching stuff out, just like you would with modular, finding the right thing and trying to find the right guitar amp combo. And I was talking to my guru at the time, the guy who was at the local shop in Ellensburg. And I was like, will the search ever end? And he goes, you don't want it to, because then you're done, Yeah. And I was like, that's totally true. Cause that's how I am. Like, I'm always going to be switching it around. I knew when I was saying, I don't use samplers or oscillators, I knew there would be a day where I'd come and say to you today when oh no, I'm into it now.
Well, I think, and if I may say with the pedal thing, there is this infinity of both pedal and guitar, and they're in communication with each other. And we kind of abdicate our role sometimes as tonal person, even though your fingers have as much say on the shaping of the sound as some of these pedals, right? Or most of the pedals. Right. You're still the instigator. Versus modular, it's always flowing, and it can be so monumental, so enormous that it can be easy to kind of put too much onus on the space. So I do think it's cool that you're keeping yourself in the mix, but I'm happy that you're using samplers. I want you to use them more. I want you to use them quantizers. I want you to mix and match the voices and the oscillators. I don't want you to think of them as being one side of the coin and the other, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you plunder from that.
Well, yeah, so I'm kind of in that fit because I've laid down mostly just using the modular with effects on the guitar, and then, modular drums that I'm now adding live drums over, but I've got my Roland V drum set, and it's taken me a year, but I think I've got the different I've built my own kit. So some of it's a jazz kit, some of, and I feel like I finally got it all good to where it doesn't sound awful. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's the next step is kind of what you were just saying. And that's part of why I wanted to get two different samplers is to try to, play, because some of these voices I have in the modular, I love my Summit. Novation Summit is awesome, but there are voices that I have in my modular set between the Swan, the Triphase, and the three body that I'm just not going to get anywhere else. And the combination of those things and the panning of those things, and how maybe they're influencing each other, all that. So that's kind of I was actually just thinking that yesterday as I was listening to some of these tracks. Like, are they done? Do they need more? And I'm like, I need to get back into the modular environment and see what I can add to them. So I'm gonna see if I can do some of that and send it your way and have you be like, that's what I was talking about.
Awesome, good. I'm so happy to hear that. That's rad. Yeah. If I may make the gentle but obvious pivot then, so it's like I also have been in a recording phase. It just happens to have landed in a record. My timing has it as coming out quite soon. I have this full album of inspired material, still focused and as conceptual as I tend to be. But I also went through a kind of a painful part of it where I had recorded the vast majority of the work, both in the DAW and some of it kind of through modular technique, even though it was way more about the in the DAW work because I was kind of squeezing these recording sessions in on the train ride to work or late at night when the kid goes to sleep. I mean, typical stuff. It's just a little atypical for me where I'm used to having these big sidebars of time to work on music. So life has changed quite a bit with kid and work at school. But I had recorded the vast majority of it and I was like, you know what, this is fine. It's nice. It gets to the concept, but it is missing so much of humanity. And I need to inject immediately. Like I just can't be restive and wait for the record to calcify in my brain and just become this maybe more turgid, wavy, wiggly thing. And so I talked to this amazing violinist who I had met through like a weird dubstep show or dubstepation. So I think the artist I opened for would not like the terminology of dubstep. I think rhythm or otherwise would be more their sweet spot. But so I opened for this artist in the backstage area. The violinist who worked with Igloo Ghost on one of his records was there. And dang, if this person Vivek Menon is so killing it, so rad, such a great player. And I just had him rinse every track. I just had him like just mess around, tool around. And suddenly that feeling that I get from modular, to be quite frank, it was happening where it's like, okay, this stuff has like distinct opinions. It is offering me an opinion. And I can either say yes or no. I can kind of push it around a little bit. But here's this whole worldview that this player had in this case, but I equally have caught the bug many a time from a piece of equipment. And so it ended up being this kind of like huge layer that had me go back and record more, had me go back and challenge my notions of where the songs were done or not. And I love that. And it ended up being indeed like, so this record's about my time with SETI as an artist in residence. SETI is, of course, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, started by Carl Sagan so long ago in like 1970 something. And this ancient institution that still hasn't found aliens. You'd imagine that in the 30, 40 years that it's been around, 50 years, that it would have caught them yet, but not quite. I mean, conspiracy theory would have you believe otherwise, but apparently not quite yet. Plenty of other phenomena, though, has been recorded and captured by their radio antenna and different kinds of telemetry and all that stuff. Rad amounts of stuff. So cool to talk to the scientists. So inspiring. And so this record is partially formed out of that time. But I knew I needed to bring it back down to earth, like talk to earthly concerns. And so the violin started to do that for me.
Okay.
So much fun. So nice to be able to do that.
Well, so this record, it's like the first track especially, but I feel like moments throughout, if you're listening to snapshots of it, it sounds like a score. But then you go, then it goes into like, what I really come to a Daedalus album searching for is that, but I feel like I don't know, it feels like it's a little bit more corralled. Like it's like, especially in contrast. God, I'm blanking on the name. The one, your recent album with
Simmers Over.
What's that?
Was it Simmers Over, the Clementine cover with my child Clementine?
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and Simmers Over is kind of a not as a conceptual record, even though there's concept that flows through it. There's some musical motifs and things that show up, and some other,
Right. You talked
specifically.
about the steel drum thing and like just how you
Yeah,
made me like a steel drum for the first time ever.
I got a little stuck on it. I got a little stuck on steel drum
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, just like anything, right? We have our obsessions. But yeah, so this record being like more focused, maybe you're hearing that it's focused through the lens of what this organization is, but also like the this sounds so strange, but the oral hygiene, the ear hygiene that these scientists go through. So they're not just detecting what they fancifully want to hear. Like here are these people desperately searching the stars for signs and traces of life. You have to be so dispassionate because clearly they believe that there's aliens out there to listen.
Hmm.
They're not just looking out of like, I don't know, I'm just gonna like,
Yeah.
focus
Right.
my crazy $1 billion radio tower, radio antennas to be at this point of space because I got some free time. Like it's just the act alone of pointing up and listening out. It takes such amounts of belief that science doesn't usually reckon with, right? Like the thesis versus outcome thing alone is just like doesn't include an act of faith like this generally. So the oral hygiene, the fact that they have to come at this stuff so open that they may get this blip or bleep, but they have to put it through such rigors to kind of make sure that it's not something.
Right.
These FRBs out there, these fast radio bursts, these ultra fast radio bursts that are like starting to like a couple years ago they first detected this, and it's this really unknown phenomena where it's like these things that shouldn't exist in space because it's like what is it like some sort of quasar, in its end of its life creating this like very strange like almost talking almost
Oh,
like
really?
noise like kind of periodic kind of rhythmic stuff, and it's like, or is this some kind of communication method that we just don't have an understanding for, or even gravitational waves that are increasingly becoming something that they're investigating and looking at. Well, it's like we may not have like the barest understanding of even like one pulse of one of these giant gravitational waves, but like maybe this is communication on a different time scale that we're just not used to, and all this stuff. So it makes it super interesting, but they still have to be like, nah,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
like
Well, that's
this,
that's good science is just you have to prove yourself wrong until you can't, Um,
exactly. So there's no other explanation that's feasible except for the one
mhm.
that includes the most outer space notion that there is intelligent life.
Right.
So making a record about that includes both trying to have some of those precepts, but then also bring in why do we make art in the first place? Is to imagine, is to be passionate, is to make errors and mistakes and kind of play messy in the space,
Yeah.
and maybe in some ways influence the scientists' rigidness, but not trying to get them off their path, just trying to make
Right.
sure that
Okay. Yeah.
being heard too.
Well, I guess when I say corralled, I feel like this because you have a lot of like the conceptual stuff. You've got the trilogy, and then you've got your more of your kind of just beat driven stuff. I don't even think beat driven is the right word, but like I feel like you're so good at, and I think it's because you have just such a deep interest in exploring how far you can go with rhythms and just and like, for lack of a better word, but it's the word that comes into my head, wackiness. You know, like I feel like with this one, I know like it's not the word I wanted. Um, but um, but I feel like this it's xenopacine, right? Is it xenopocene? Yeah.
That would be a interpretation, just like with the way I say Daedalus, and it's not the way the Greeks would say Daedalus. I
Right,
don't think
right.
they would say scene. I think they would probably put more zhoosh on it.
Right.
It's fine. But yeah,
Yeah.
Xenopacene meaning alien age, just like we're kind of in the Anthropocene.
Hmm.
This would be the Xenopocene, the alien age, when when we have this kind of positive occurrence of an alien
Right.
transmission.
Yeah. And I feel like, and it's a great thematic umbrella for this thing, this idea, or my perception of it being kind of like sitting firmly between maybe, like especially the third installment of the trilogy, and then it's got the moments of like when I first hit play, I was like, oh, did Daedalus make an ambient album? but oh no, there are moments of non-ambient, so it's like, yeah, I'm it's cool to hear this kind of meshing. It seems like the most blended of kind of your sonic, what you offer sonically, I guess. Do you
It's
think that's
very kind.
accurate, or am
Yeah,
I
I mean, I think
am
it's,
I off on
I
that?
think, no, I think it's a focused record, and I wanted to do modern classical things. The electroacoustic modern classical tradition of like the late 20th century is fascinating to me. It's kind of where I got my start musically. My parents, for whatever weird reason, they enacted some John Cage pieces when they were in college with John Cage.
Oh
They
wow,
were kind
cool.
of part of the latter half of the Fluxus thing. They were doing stuff adjacent to that, which had a sound outcome. People think about like Non-Such records and all the kind of electroacoustic stuff that they released. My parents had a lot of that in their collection, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other bizarre stuff too, and they didn't really listen to it. I found out later on in life, like they, like maybe like many academics, they kind of had records because they were supposed to, but not necessarily because they actually engaged or listened to them. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
up to me to discover them randomly and be like, what is this Xenakis thing? Like, what's going? I feel weird, and like it, kind of like a growing adolescent way. So rad and so unmooring as a young musician to have that stuff under a needle, playing loudly in headphones. I'm sure other people had that experience with Loveless or something, but for me, it was, Steve Reich is
Yeah.
Come Out record was like one of my songs that I played a lot for myself and friends. That was always the song I played for people when they were coming down from whatever drugs. You got to check this out. It's
Right.
tape
Yeah, yeah.
phasing.
Yeah, yeah.
That probably was very annoying. I probably sent people on bad trips on several occasions.
Oh, that's not nearly as annoying as me making an album called Music to Come Down To for that
Oh,
purpose. Like, hey, listen to this.
but at least, from a Spotify, you were like really hitting the algorithm,
Yeah,
right? You're
right.
not letting anything go to question. When somebody types it in, they'll get served that up right away. Um, but gosh, so it's like I have this penchant for the modern classical thing, and in a variety of ways. I don't always like where it's moved to with some of these composers, both ambient wise as well as, and not to say that I dislike it. It just doesn't, like, I wanted more noise. I want more
Yeah.
strange kind of spread, and not necessarily to speak to 12 tone, even tempered, whatever else. And so I'm playing around with some of that stuff, but then equally the violin kind of helps bring it back down to earth. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you might be hearing, and this is what I was getting at, is that here's all these same kind of wiggles that I normally do, and then I have a strong collaborator in both Vivek, but then also Rap Ferreira jumps on a track as an MC, and then Eli from the Breathing Effect also helped wrestle one song to be very tuneful, very beautiful, very elegiac, if I'm saying that word right,
Mm-hmm.
kind of almost mournful. Uh, and so, yeah, like, I like collaborative work. I have other records that have more collaboration in my more distant past. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
while. I think the isolation both of pandemic, but then also prior to that, like, life, at least as a creative, it's like it's too fast moving for me to reach out to my peers or people I esteem and be like, hey, let's jam out some music. Like,
Totally.
just seems like a fever dream at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I love those moments where you get to something through consensus, and you're not just in that kind of producer seat where everything is the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I
And
just don't.
having a collaborator too can just like bust you out of your if you're in some sort of box that you haven't realized you've drawn around yourself, or in a rut maybe that you don't even realize you're in, or just to have, especially if it's a really trusted collaborator, to give you insights that are not just complimentary, and not that just truth, like, hey, this part's just too long, or this snare does not sound good, like this kind of thing, like, because you need to hear that sometimes, because like one of the tracks that I'm working on mixing right now, I've just decided like I can't listen to it for like a week, because I've fatigued my ears to the current mix, so I don't know if it's good or bad, and I have to take some time. So, and I think
We have
having
to be
another
cartographers.
person can speed that up.
Yeah, we have to become cartographers of ourselves, of our ears, of our soul, or whatever. And we have to figure out how to both like get a clear map and an idea of who we are, but then equally we have to find a way off the map. We have to actually have that exploration component really take place rather than doing lip service or ear service or
Right.
whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And it can be so easy to be like, oh, I'm just using a new technique. I'm trying a new scale. This sounds new and novel, but you're not really plundering. You're not really going deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Okay, we are about to hit an hour. I'm glad that we
Right.
got to the record because and thank you for letting me do whatever it is. I don't know if it was waxing poetic / interrogating, but
It's like I'm gonna go there. I just like
yeah,
can't help. But there's stronger. Like you have such a great platform, and you have a great community, and I'm really grateful every time I get a chance to speak to them because this is like, sadly, other things without that festival, I wouldn't have met as many of the people who are like directly in
right.
your scene, and
Mm-hmm.
is really cool in some ways because like they're very on your wavelength and they're asking some of the same questions about their environments and themselves, and like it's hard not to wax poetic basically because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're
Well,
really
and
doing it.
I think also, you know, anybody who gets to know you either personally or through, long form talks like this, it's very clear that you are 100% in it for the love of the game. Like, like you are an enthusiast and, like you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, I have a record, but let's talk about the thing. And you're serious. And I think that is like, that's one of the hallmarks of our community too. It's just this like, I don't want to talk about me right now. Let's just like, let's talk about this thing that we have this common love about that other people definitely don't want to hear us talk about.
It is. I mean, I appreciate that you. Yeah, it's like a selfish thing because it's like, dang, if like in my everyday, like hey, talking to the baby often, it's amazing. It's
Mhm.
amazing the thing that Clementine's up to. And all this dinosaur stuff's come up recently, and he still messes around with the blip box a little bit, and so there's
Oh,
some synths
nice.
and stuff going on. It's like rad, but then like, yeah, it's a different. You can't nourish the soul just with
Right.
looking at this
Yeah.
one miracle and just being like, what's going to happen next? Cool, cool, cool. But like the synths are just waiting
Yeah.
on
Right.
the
Yeah.
wing.
What is he like 5 now? 4, 5?
No, not at
No.
all. 2.5. Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. No, this is
Okay.
still a freshy thing. My
Well,
gosh.
okay. Because I was thinking that and I'm always off, especially like with the pandemic and stuff. So I was like, I got to add 2 years to whatever
Yeah.
my guess is. Um,
It feels like some of the conclusions he's coming to feel very, very mature or whatever. But like, I don't know.
that's cool.
It is kind of weird to think that I'm at the precipice of him starting to remember stuff. I'm not saying, people have all their different ages and stuff, and maybe this is all like imprinting, but like part of it is just this, wait, and are we like, what is he going to really, what's going to start to being these like really formative moments? Like, oh,
Right.
like,
Yeah. God. And it's funny to think that like, our parents probably didn't think about that as in depth as, you just said. And like what I'm interested to see what like this crap of kids, what like as adults, like what kind of weird effect will this kind of this heightened awareness of that kind of stuff, like what like there's going to be positive and negative aspects to it, of course, but like who knows, like it's going to be interesting to
yeah,
see.
I worry that the mirror is going to be too reflective and that they're going to be having too clear of a view of themselves or too much pressure on that to form a self or form an identity that is both projected inward and outward. And
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff that takes years and years to figure. They might be forced to do that right away and kind of commit to things that they maybe would or wouldn't. It might be glorious. It might be like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine like having that warp zone and skipping all that time and just getting
Right.
to some truth. But it's going to be hard no matter what. And it already is the case. Like, you see it happening. The kind of amount of people parsing out the info and stuff can be a lot. I deal
Mm-hmm.
with it enough with the kid, but much less these college age students who are also trying to figure out what a career is like in the industry. It's a lot.
That I
It's really
feel
hard
like
to be like, hey,
that's
like,
yeah, that's a whole other conversation that I really would like to have with you because I'm currently building an intro to Eurorack
cool.
core. It's not
Master class?
it's gonna be a workshop, and then I'm going to develop kind of like like 2 other workshops that this builds off of that will eventually become a course. But I'm doing it through Patchworks Academy, so
Awesome. Hey,
yeah,
that's wonderful.
I'm so excited to
Cool.
start doing that.
super happy. If you ever want to do any like intel or research, happy to kind of give you some of the conclusions that our program has gotten to.
Okay, cool.
And,
Yeah, I definitely, you've been on my mind as I'm putting this together as some, like I don't want to overextend any of my friendly resources, but yeah, you're definitely, but the reason I bring that up is, yeah, talking, especially in the courses that you teach in the environment you teach in, that's got to be a difficult topic to really go over without having, kind of a forlorn undertone to it of like,
I mean, I don't tend to. I tend to be pretty affirming because I have this hope that people can be clever to figure, like, the art is not so much just putting out a song. The art is being the artist that it puts out songs. And so
yes,
by having
yeah.
that, by moving back a few steps, you can both more clearly see what you're doing in the kind of wider world things, but also esteem the work as being important in the kind of micro side of it, which is, of course, it's easy for people to get shouted down just by the din of stuff around them. So, or, they hear these success stories that seemingly overnight and all that stuff. But I will say that it can be dispiriting just in the sense that you just have this churn of people that come through, and you just know only so many of them are going to even just realize what they're trying to get from their passions, right? So I'm sure you're going to have some of that going on, depending how much directly you're working with people. But then also the fact that modular is still kind of, it's both seen as being this privileged art that only the moneyed rich can kind of play in, but then also how some people put way too much weight on it. It's like, oh, this is where the sound design that EEPROM was sourcing from, or that Aphex has been using, and like, not to just single those two people out, but it's just interesting how, like, you just have these certain musicians who just, they put way too much on it, and they just like lose sight of even why they're doing it. They're just like, I gotta make this next, like, push. I gotta make a growl. Like, I had a student come up to me recently and was like that. I just want to make a growl. Like, why do you want to make it? Why? And they're just like, well, I need it for the song because I'm doing the sound, and like, it's this thing, and like this.
Yeah. Tunnel vision, and just like, yeah. I mean,
it's a giant tower that's going to come crashing down around them when they realize it's like.
I think that's something that I've learned throughout my various attempts at becoming a professional artist and whatever, like, I'm so glad that the first 3 big attempts I made were not the thing that actually worked out, because I'd be in a fucking Cookie Monster metal band that I was started when I was 18 if it all worked out at the beginning. And I don't want that now. So, like, I think what I'm trying to say there is, like, I think the overnight success story, I think, is something that I was sold big time, with the behind the musics and everything. And, we didn't have the access like we do now with social media and everything. And I just, it's a fairy tale. It's not like, there was some stuff like that, but you have to put in your time and figure it out. And
this is the exact stuff that you should be sharing with your students to a degree. See if you can find a way of just even the smallest snapshot in a very gentle way, probably maybe more than the kind of one where you kind of beat yourself up or they're going to talk about how much your values have changed. Because, of course, there's still some truth in that band is still in you somewhere. The guitar is still being featured, all this stuff. It's like, but if you can express that, I think the students or whomever is taking the course would really appreciate that, because I'm sure they could see themselves in that. But you also might find some ways of kind of reckoning and making peace with some of those past selves, which I think is always valuable.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. That's Alfred, always just putting a beautiful cherry on the top of the end of a conversation.
Well, it's nice to be able to chat. I look forward to it. Play that module on the spot in Portland. Send some word about when that goes down.
Will do.
Maybe I can they do streams or something, but also just it's really good to catch up a little bit. I look forward to catching up more, though, not just in the recorded space.
Likewise. Please, Yeah. I'm going to hit stop here. That's our show. Thank you so much for coming back to Modular Modcast. Thank you to Alfred for coming back on. It's always a pleasure. Don't forget, their new album is coming out this week. Link in the show description. Also, I want to remind y'all that I am doing the Intro to Eurorack workshop at Patchworks August 18th at 3 p.m. Link in the show description to all the details for that. Speaking of Patchworks, thank you to Patchworks for their continued support of Modular Modcast. If you would like to support the show, you can visit patreon.com/Modular Modcast. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who has supported so far. Sorry, this is the second week in a row I haven't done a featured artist, but with helping out with my mom and getting a new job, and I've applied for another job, it's just been like kind of crazy lately. So yeah, send me emails telling me how hard you think my life must be and how much you appreciate all the sacrifices that I make. I'm the best. But seriously, thank you so much for coming back to Modular Modcast. This week's secret word is rigid. Until next week.